Hi, this is Carolina32. Thanks for checking out my channel. I'm replacing the impeller on the Cummins 6BT, so I'll be showing you how to do that. You need to get access, and you'll see the way your water pump works. You have a raw water feed, which comes in down here, gets that up here. Water pump is supplying the water, comes out through there, and goes through this pipe, which comes into your aftercooler. Here's our nice big aftercooler back here. So you can remove this pipe to give yourself a little more access. Now, this depends on how your engine was set up, how much stuff you'll have to remove. But I got that pipe out of the way. Next thing I removed is up here, there is a fuel line connection right here. That comes out of your fuel filter. So you can go ahead and take that off, because obviously you don't want a big fuel line coming right up through here where you're trying to get to this area. The next line I removed is also a fuel line that comes into your manual priming pump if you ever need to prime your fuel system. That one actually comes out of the fuel coolant block, which is here. This can be bypassed. Seaboard Marine sells a kit for that, and it helps to clean up this area a little bit. It makes your impeller changes that much easier. So you'll need to get those off, and you'll note up here that this back portion is made to fit a wrench. So put a backup or piggyback wrench on here, and then your other wrench on this end, and then you can go ahead and loosen this up. Be mindful of your righty-tighty, lefty-loosey stuff. It's kind of confusing sometimes when you're working, upside down and things of that nature. So just keep that in mind. You don't want to over-tighten this stuff. Same thing for this line over here. Also has a backup place where you can put your backup wrench and then spin this off. Fuel's going to come out of these. You'll want to make sure your fuel lines are shut off. And then additionally, put down some absorbent material, collect the fuel. That will give you better access to your impeller area. This is going to be covered with a plate. That plate you can see right here. And there's a series of bolts. You can see those bolts there. So you take those 3 bolts off, and this plate will come off. As soon as you loosen the last bolt, it's probably going to release, and some of your water is going to come out, especially if your boat has been winterized. You're probably going to get some that pink stuff come out of there. So again, you can put down a rag to catch some of that, and you'll have this area nice and opened up. There is an O-ring which goes right in here, and you'll want to seat that. That comes with your new impeller. So take the old O-ring out and put the new one in. I would do this last. You don't want this to fall out while you're trying to work. And you'll want to bump your ignition key until your keyway, there's a slot here that a key slides in. There's a corresponding mating slot in this centerpiece here, which is part of the pump housing. And when the key goes in here, it mates this part to your impeller and connects them together so they spin. You want this facing at 12 o'clock. That way when you pull your impeller out, your key will be sitting in the keyway, most likely on the pump housing. If the key does come out as you pull the impeller out, just be mindful of that, and try not to let it fall or anything. The worst thing you can do is to have this facing down here, and then pull your impeller out. The key is sitting in the keyway up like that on the centerpiece behind the impeller, and then after you pull the impeller out, the key drops. There's some little vents or grates in here to allow the water through. The key will fall down inside to your raw water intake hose. This is very thick, hard to move, very difficult to get to, and you need to get that key out, because if you don't and you start your motor, that key can get sucked up in here and damage your entire water pump. So the last thing you want to do is to lose that key. Please keep that in mind. The easiest way, again, is to keep this at 12 o'clock, just like you see here. Now, there's different tools you can use to pull your impeller. I'm going to show you one that works very well. So this is the Snap-on CJ83-3. Let me explain to you what this looks like. So when you get this, there's going to be some extra bit of metal on this end. It's bare metal, it's not threaded. I cut that off with a hacksaw. The reasoning is that I wanted this to be able to go in, have those threads immediately made up with the impeller so that I can use this to extract it. So let's show you guys how this works here. Okay, so you can see that this guy is threaded in here. This impeller has already been replaced, so this is my new one. Just showing you the process. It's very hard to film and do it. But as you tighten this, this bolt will drive forward and it will press against the face of the impeller housing, the part that actually drives the impeller, and it's going to correspondingly pull the impeller this way, very slowly. You can completely control how quickly it comes out just by this tool, and it's a lot of ratcheting. Get your ratchet and go with it, but it's a very gradual way to remove the impeller, and it will slowly pull it out. Then you can get it out the rest of the way. It also allows you to carefully remove it, keeping track of where the key is. You'll note that only one side of your impeller is threaded. The other side behind here is not threaded. So you want to keep that in mind when you reinstall it. So let's talk about reinstalling. Alright, so here's a fresh impeller. Just pulled it out of here. And you can see that side isn't threaded. That side is threaded. So this is our front. We want to put the threaded side facing towards us. And you want to use one of these. Obviously this one's been used, so I need to get another one for this impeller. The idea is that you put this around here, you start to tighten this down, and you bend the vanes as you go. Okay, you'll end up with something like this. And what I did was, since I'm going to be inserting this end first, I had it, towards the back here, right about there. And the vanes were compressed, and then as I pushed in my impeller, I kind of grabbed this with my fingers and pulled it forward. So you're pulling this forward after it's tight. It's going to be hard to pull. Just take your time. You don't want to tear any of the vanes or anything. But you get it compressed down, and then you slowly pull this forward as you push it in. And this works really well, very cheap, to install your impeller. And you'll want to use quite a bit of grease. It doesn't really matter what type of grease you use, but you want to get into this housing here. Imagine your impeller's out. Just pull inside of here with grease. Rub it on each vane of your impeller. Just goop it up. You're not going to hurt anything. And keep an eye on your key when you go ahead and put it in. You want your keyway to be lined up with the slot in this center piece here. That metal piece which drives your impeller. So get it lined up as close as you can, and then you can come back and you can always stick a screwdriver in here and do this stuff and pull it and move it that last quarter of an inch, whatever you need to do to get it to line up. It helps also if your stuff is in a bad spot to have a mirror tool like this. That's also very useful. And when you're putting your key in, you do the key last. So push the impeller on like I showed you. Don't worry about which way the vanes face. That's not critical. They're going to face the correct way as soon as that pump drives and gives that one revolution. So don't worry about that. Just need to get this thing in here. And using that method with the zip tie is really not too difficult. You get it almost all the way in, you pull your zip tie off, and you'll push it forward with the palm of your hand just like that. And then once you have it pressed in, you can use a mirror or whatever you need to do to get the keyway lined up with the keyway on the pump. Before you slide your little key in, I would recommend putting down a rag or something so that if your key falls, it will land on the rag and not go down under your engine. As you're working and doing this stuff, take your time and think about what is the worst possible thing that I could do at this phase and try to prevent that from happening. Anytime you're working on boats, if you keep that mindset, you're going to save yourself a lot of time and a headache. That goes for climbing up the ladder, getting on your boat, being careful when you're climbing in and out of things so you don't smash your head. You know, every little phase, just take your time and think, and it will really save you a lot of headaches. So once you have that pushed in, you've got your key in there, did it carefully so you didn't drop it, put your O-ring in, and you go ahead and put your plate on and tighten this up. The other great thing about using all this grease is that when you do fire this up for the first time, without any water in it, it's going to be nice and lubricated so you don't have any premature wear on the vanes of your impeller. So I hope that was helpful, and I hope you learned a few tips and tricks for putting the impeller in. There's a lot of expensive tools and everyone has their own little method to do it, but that little snap-on bolt is $32, and zip ties are cheap as can be, and grease is pretty cheap. The rest is just taking your time and you'll get it done. It's nice to be able to know how to do this, especially if you're going offshore, but I would say I would really not want to do this out in the ocean in a hot engine bay, leaning on hot engines while you're bobbing around out there. Doing it on the hard, definitely give it a try. Save yourself a lot of money. You're not waiting around for a mechanic, and you'll have the satisfaction of knowing that you did it yourself. Alright, thank you for watching, and take care.